How to build your PC. When you put all the parts together, make sure you have plenty of room to keep your build organized. Be aware of static electricity as you build. It's one of the few ways the hardware can be damaged, but it's easy to avoid. Frequently ground yourself by touching an unpainted metal surface or wear an electrostatic discharge wrist strap to protect your system's component from the static electricity that's naturally present in your body. It's also helpful to keep a can of compressed air to remove any dust or fine debris from the interface as you're installing the processor, memory, and SSD. Step 1. Open case. Remove the back screws. Take side cover off. It's easiest to work on your PC with it laying sideways on a flat surface, so the open side is facing up. Install motherboard in system unit. Screws and standoffs are often supplied with your computer case. However, sometimes screws may be supplied with the motherboard. The motherboard dictates the physical form factor and size of your PC build, but it also determines what other pieces of hardware the computer can use. For example, the motherboard establishes the power of the processor it can handle, the memory technology and number of modules that can be installed, and the storage form factor and storage interface. There are a few different sizes, also known as form factors, of motherboard commonly available, so most cases have screw positions that will accommodate the various sizes of motherboard. You don't need to install mounting standoffs in all of them, just the ones that match your motherboard will be fine. The CPU is the engine of your computer and sets the performance expectations for the entire build. Memory and storage fuel the processor, which controls every data transaction within the PC. 1. Locate the CPU socket holder on the motherboard. 2. Lift up the latch lever to release and hinge open the CPU socket cover. 3. Holding the CPU by its sides, line up any alignment notches or the triangle mark on the corner of the CPU to the triangle mark on the motherboard. Gently place it straight down into the motherboard socket to seat the CPU. 4. Lower the CPU socket cover over the CPU and lower the latch lever. Closed again to secure the CPU socket holder closed. Tip: don't apply force to seat the CPU. Avoid touching or pressing down on the back of the CPU with your fingers, as any residue from your hands can destroy the heat transfer surface for the cooler, which will be mounted next. Mount memory or RAM. Adding memory or RAM is one of the fastest, easiest, and most affordable ways to amplify the performance of the computer you're building, because it gives your system more available space to temporarily store data that's being used. 1. Press to open the clips at both ends of the RAM mounting slots. 2. Line up the notch on the RAM stick with the mounting slot. 3. Seat the RAM and press it firmly down into the slot. The tab should automatically latch as closed you press the RAM down, securing the RAM in place. 4. Install any other RAM sticks using the same process. Most motherboards will have multiple RAM mounting slots. If you are installing pairs of RAM sticks, mount them in the same color slots on the motherboard. Install CPU cooler. 1. If required, apply thermal paste to the back of the CPU. 2. Seat CPU heatsink or cooler and fix in position. 3. Plug the power cable attached to the cooler fan into the motherboard connector. Some CPU coolers do come with a thermal pad already applied, in which case you can skip step 1. If yours doesn't, you will need to apply thermal paste to the CPU surface before seating the CPU color and position. Install graphics card. Not all computers have a dedicated graphics card. If you have decided to use the onboard graphics of your motherboard instead of installing a dedicated graphics card, you can skip this section. Install power supply. Depending on the kind of PC you're building, you'll also need to adjust what you're looking for with a case and power supply. If you're creating a high-powered performance, you'll need a robust power supply to make it all run, and a case with optimal internal airflow and fans to expel hot air that could potentially damage the system. Zip ties are a massive help with managing all the cables inside your rig, and consolidating the cables helps improve airflow. 1. Attach the power supply and fasten with screws to the case mounting points. 2. Plug the largest cabling connector from the power supply cabling into the motherboard power connector. 3. Plug the 8-pin cabling connector from the power supply cabling into the CPU power connector. Install storage drives. Your files and data are saved long-term on your storage drive. This data is held on either a hard disk drive or solid-state drive. Although hard drives generally give you more storage space, SSDs have essentially made them outdated. SSDs are on average 6 times faster and 90 times more energy efficient than hard drives. Storage drives come in two main sizes, a 3.5 or 2.5. Due to their smaller size, 2.5 drives may need an adapter plate to place them within your PC case. The exact placing strategy for storage drives will vary from computer case to computer case. Close case and connect peripherals. Before closing up your case completely, you may wish to do some cable management, which means tucking away, rerouting, or removing and securing any loose slack from cables which would otherwise be hanging around loose in your case. Build complete! Congratulations! If you made it this far, you should have a fully assembled computer. After a final check to ensure there are no loose screws floating around in your case and that all cables are clear of any moving parts, it's time to power on your new computer.